I remember the day it all began. It was a warm Saturday afternoon, and our suburban street was peaceful as usual. I had just finished watering my plants when I saw Mr. Thompson, my next door neighbor, pacing on his front porch. He had a scowl on his face, the kind that made me feel uneasy. I didn't know him well, but I knew he was quick to judge others, especially people who looked different from him. Later that day, a new family moved into the house across the street. They were a black family, a couple and their two children. The kids were running around with excitement, laughing and playing, while their parents carried boxes inside. I could sense Mr. Thompson watching from behind his curtains. His eyes were filled with disapproval. I felt a twinge of anxiety because I knew Mr. Thompson's reputation. He often complained about small things, like the color of someone's fence or the volume of their music. I worried about how he might treat these new neighbors. Still, I never expected what happened next. That evening, I heard sirens and saw flashing lights outside my window. Two police cars had pulled up in front of the new family's house. Officers got out and approached them. I was shocked. It was only their first day here, and I couldn't imagine what might have happened already. Curious and concerned, I stepped outside. Mr. Thompson was there, talking to an officer. He was pointing toward the family's home, and I heard him say something about suspicious activity. My stomach twisted. I knew that feeling all too well, the sense that something unfair was happening. The father of the family calmly explained to the police that they were simply moving in. He showed them the lease paperwork and offered to show identification. The mother stood by him, looking worried as she kept an eye on her children. The kids looked scared, clinging to each other on the porch. The officers apologized for the inconvenience, realizing that the call was baseless. They left soon after. I saw Mr. Thompson still glaring at the family, but no one else said a word. My heart sank. I wanted to say something, to offer help or comfort, but I froze. I felt ashamed for doing nothing in that moment. Over the next few days, I noticed something surprising. Each morning, the father would put on a uniform. He was a police officer himself. The mother worked at the local hospital, and the children were polite and friendly whenever I passed by. I wondered if Mr. Thompson had any idea who they were. Part of me hoped that learning these details might change his view. Another part of me worried it wouldn't matter, because sometimes people hold on to their hate too tightly. One Sunday afternoon, I was trimming my roses when Mr. Thompson came outside. He stood by the fence that separated our yards. After a few awkward moments of silence, he cleared his throat. "You see those new folks across the street?" he asked. I nodded. He let out a sigh. "I didn't know the man was a cop until the other day. Saw him in uniform, even got an award pinned on his chest." I tried to stay calm. "They seem like a nice family," I said gently. He looked down at his feet. "Maybe I shouldn't have called the police. I guess I just assumed." His voice faded as he spoke, and for a moment I saw genuine regret in his eyes. A week later, I noticed Mr. Thompson crossing the street, holding a small basket of baked goods. He was nervous, shoulders tense, but determined. I watched from my window as he knocked on the new family's door. When the father answered, Mr. Thompson stammered an apology. Though I couldn't hear every word, I saw him extend the basket and bow his head. The father hesitated, then shook Mr. Thompson's hand. The mother joined them, and they invited him inside. I felt my eyes prick with tears. It was a small gesture, but it meant a lot. I hoped this was the beginning of something better for our neighborhood. A few days later, the Black family hosted a small barbecue to thank everyone for welcoming them. Neighbors came over with side dishes and desserts. I saw Mr. Thompson talking to the father, smiling as he asked about his work. The kids ran around, happy to play with the other children on the block. It was a simple gathering, but there was an air of peace and acceptance. I remembered how Mr. Thompson had once stood on his porch with that harsh look in his eyes. Now there he was, chatting and even laughing with the same people he had judged before. Standing in the corner of the backyard, I felt hope growing inside me. In those moments, I realized how fear and prejudice could be replaced by understanding and kindness if only we gave ourselves the chance. It reminded me that change often starts with a small step, like a basket of homemade cookies or a heartfelt apology. By the end of the evening, the neighborhood felt different. The tension I once felt seemed to fade. I still remembered the flashing lights, the scared children, and the look on Mr. Thompson's face when he first called the police. But I also saw how one moment of remorse could lead to a bridge of understanding. We're not perfect, and there's still much work to be done. Yet the sight of neighbors sharing a meal and laughing together under the soft glow of porch lights reminded me that even the harshest walls can be torn down with empathy and compassion. And I hoped with all my heart that our street would never again allow suspicion to overshadow kindness.